Hello, lovely people. Happy Sunday to you. I hope that the sun's shining where you are, or if the sun is a little bit too much for you, that you're beautifully cool somewhere here at the end of June. I've had a couple of really lovely, interesting events and sessions over the last couple of weeks that have got me thinking again about my passion and absolute commitment to the idea of inclusive education, just this idea that we should be educating all our kids together. And I guess what I thought I'd do is that today I'd like to tell you some stories. It's nothing to do with the fact that the sun's shining and I don't fancy writing it down so much, maybe as it is. But I just thought today I'd like to tell you some stories about kind of particularly the early years of when my two were in their local schools and what that meant. And then maybe it's next week, or maybe it's even the next couple of weeks, I'll do some unpicking of it. But yeah, there's two events that have happened that have really got me thinking and just reminded me why. I think what it is that everything that I believe passionately about in terms of people having gloriously ordinary lives, I really do think stems from this idea that our kids get to go to school with each other. Anyway, I told you I'd unpick it next week, so I won't do that now. Let me tell you some stories, and I'm just going to tell you them and leave them with you, and then maybe it's tell me during the week how they've resonated with you. And yeah, like I say, I'll get a bit more thoughtful next week. But these are some of my favourite stories. So the girl went to her, not her local primary school, a local primary school. When she was 9, she went into year 5, and she had back then no words. That's not true. She had no as a word, but she had very few words, and she also had no friends. And the day she went to meet her new classmates, the week before she started, they were all assembled on the mat. Imagine a little village primary school, and there's 20 or so year 5 and year 6 kids sat on the mat, and the girl walks in to the classroom and she looked at all the kids sitting on the mat, and she spoke the most words she's ever spoken in her life. And she did a whole body stim. She has a beautiful whole body stim where she jumps and stims with her hands. And she did that, and she pointed at the kids and said, white girls and brown girls and black girls and orange girls, all to do with their hair colour. Lucy's girls. And I just put such a smile on my face. And then I guess let's stick with the girl. A few weeks after she started at school, and I was spending quite a lot of time in her school helping everybody get her settled in. And one of the little girls in reception class, who was 5, Anna said to me, Tricia, why won't Lucy say hello to me? And I said, oh, Anna, sweetheart, she can be a bit rude, because she could be a bit rude. And also, she doesn't always notice that you're saying hello. And Anna looked at me for a little while and she said, like when you're in Spain. And I thought that was blooming genius, wasn't it? So what she was saying is, as we all know, if you're in a country where you don't speak the language, we often switch off, don't we? We often don't concentrate on what people are saying. And I said, sweetheart, absolutely, like when you're in Spain. And she said, okay. We'll just keep saying hello. And you know what? I've noticed that if you go right up to her and you touch her shoulder and say, hello, Lucy, she's more likely to say hello. I'll tell the other kids. I thought, lovely. Speech and language therapy assessment and program in 30 seconds for a 5-year-old. Then let me tell you a couple about Ciaran. He doesn't remember either of these stories, which is a shame, but never mind. When he first started, he didn't start until he was 11. He started halfway through year 7. And the wonderful head of year, Mrs. Smith, when Ciaran was starting, went and sought out the year 11 school bully and said to him, Jake, mate, Ciaran's starting. Just wants to introduce you. You know that sometimes Ciaran does some stuff that other kids might find a bit odd. Can I just leave it in your hands to make sure that he's all right and he stays okay? Jake went, yeah, all right, miss. You leave it with me. It'll be fine. Isn't that brilliant? And then another wonderful Ciaran story, which is my favourite, I think, is that in his year 9 review, we have a policy, and I heartily recommend this policy for anybody who has kids is that any meeting about them, we always have another child in the room, another young person, their friend, somebody who's there who kind of is going to have a teenage or young person view of the world. And and in Ciaran's meeting, we had Ashley Girl, who's not to be confused with Ashley Boy. And at the start of his Year 9 review, Mick, the lovely Ed Syke, who was he's a really great bloke, said, right, everybody, we need to be thinking, I think, about when Ciaran goes into Year 10, because all the other kids are going to be doing their GCSEs, and it's going to be harder for us to have Ciaran in the classroom. And I kind of zipped my mouth, which is unusual for me, and just wondered what everybody else would say. And Ashley pipes up, what do you mean he can't be in the classroom? And Mick said, well, you know, Ashley, you know, Ciaran does find it hard to keep still sometimes, doesn't he? And he does tend to wander around the classroom, and he can be a bit noisy. And she said, yeah, it's not a problem for us. And they had a bit more of a chat, and Ashley said, so... and then Ashley said, yeah, what do you mean anyway? What do you mean, isn't Ciaran going to be doing his GCSEs as well? And then another discussion, you know, went on about, well, will he be doing his GCSEs or not? And then pièce de résistance, Ashley said, anyway, how's he going to learn if he's not in the classroom? And I wanted to hug her. And to be fair to the adults in the room, they all agreed that we'd give it till Christmas. We'd give it a whirl, which has been the history of inclusive education for both my kids. We'll give it a whirl, and we'll see how it goes. And, you know, if it's not working at Christmas, then we'll have another look. But actually, it worked really beautifully. But that was Ashley standing up. And then the final story, I guess, is a sadder one. So I guess this is the point of Gloriously Ordinary. It's not all heartsing. It's not all heartsing. So the girl came to live with us when she was 8, and stuff had been really tricky for her. And she hadn't seen, after she went into the care system, she didn't see her birth mum for a lot of years. And about 6 months, I guess, after she'd started at primary school, I picked her up. We lived in a rural community, so it was a 5 or 6 mile drive to take her and pick her up to school every day. So I picked her up from school that day, and she'd already started to get a few more words. She's not a woman of huge words now, but she does have some words that she uses, and she started to get some words very quickly after going to her local school. And she sat in the car and she said to me, Ellie's mum is Claire. And I said, yes, sweetheart, Ellie's mum is Claire. And she said, Emma's mum is Karen. Yeah, that's true. And I'm driving. You can imagine I'm driving all the way and she's sitting in the back. And she said, Lucy's mum is Garn. And I had a moment, I was like, of absolute, you know, heart, you know, plummeting to the pit of my stomach. And I said, oh no, sweetheart, Lucy's mum is Sue. She looked at me and she says, Lucy's mum is Sue. Lucy's mummy is Sue. Lucy's mum is Trisha. And then I had another moment of, and what she was saying was, and this was the point, I guess, about the kind of the glorious ordinariness about inclusive education, is what it had exposed to her when she was getting the taxi to special school. She didn't have that presence of mums or dads at the school gate. And so she didn't know about mums and dads and other people. I genuinely don't think that she noticed that. And what she was saying, I think, and I don't know because she can't explain it to me, was in that sentence was that, okay, I get that mummy's not here anymore, but the mum, which is the people who do the pickups and the drop-offs and sort the stuff out, Trish will be the mum. And actually from this day, and still to this day, she still says Trish is her mum. Trish is her mum. So a few stories of the gloriously ordinariness of inclusive education. Have a think, I don't know, tell me how they resonate for you this week, and why you might think I've picked those stories. And I'll have a think as well and think about why I picked those stories. And I'll write about this week and come back to you and put something out this time next week, and we'll see where we go with it. But have a really lovely week. See you next time. Bye.